Ladies, can I talk to you for a moment? Can I speak to the queens in this room? I need you to hear me, not just with your ears, but with your spirit. Because too many women have lost themselves trying to be everything to someone who was never meant to have all of them. You were born with a light inside of you, a brilliance that is uniquely yours. It is not accidental. It is not coincidental. It is divine. The way you carry yourself, the way you dream, the way you love, the way you speak, it all contributes to the glow that sets you apart. But life has a way of making you feel like you have to dim that light. Some people will look at you and see too much confidence, too much passion, too much ambition, too much power. And instead of celebrating it, they will make you feel like you need to shrink. They will tell you to quiet down, to soften your presence, to take up less space, to be less bold, to be less of yourself. And some of you have done it, not because you wanted to, but because you thought it was necessary. You thought that maybe, just maybe, if you made yourself smaller, if you stopped being so passionate, if you stopped shining so brightly, you would be more accepted. You thought it would make them more comfortable, make them stay, make them love you, make them see your worth. But what you don't realize is that your light is not just for them to see, it's for you to walk in. The moment you start turning it down to make others feel comfortable, you begin to lose sight of who you are. Some of you have spent years in relationships and friendships and jobs and situations where you were made to feel like too much. You were told that your voice was too strong. Your dreams were too big, your standards were too high. So you started apologizing for being yourself. You started making yourself fit into spaces that were never meant to hold you. You let go of the fire that once made you unstoppable, and now you find yourself wondering why you feel so empty. It is because you have spent too much time trying to be someone you were never meant to be. The world needs your light. Your purpose needs your light. There are people assigned to your destiny who need to see you fully walking in what God has given you. When you start dimming your light, you don't just hurt yourself. You hurt the people who were supposed to be inspired by you. You hurt the little girl who looks up to you, the friend who draws strength from you, the stranger who was meant to cross paths with you and be changed because of your courage. It is not your job to make people comfortable with your greatness. It is not your job to make yourself smaller so that others don't feel insecure. Your job is to be exactly who you were created to be, to walk boldly in your calling, to embrace every gift, every talent, every ounce of power that you have been given. The right people will never ask you to shrink. The right people will never ask you to be less. The right people will see your light and celebrate it, not compete with it. Some of you have been waiting for permission to be great. You have been waiting for someone to validate your dreams, to tell you it's okay to be bold, to be confident, to be powerful. But let me tell you something. You do not need permission to shine. You do not need approval to be everything you were created to be. If someone cannot handle the weight of your brilliance, that is not your burden to carry. If someone is intimidated by your success, that is not your problem to solve. You have spent enough time dimming yourself down. You have spent enough time pretending to be less than what you are. It is time to stand tall in your identity. It is time to step fully into your calling. It is time to shine unapologetically. There was a time when you had dreams that set your soul on fire. You had a vision for your life that was so clear, so undeniable, that it fueled you even on the hardest days. You saw yourself achieving things that others doubted, walking in places that some never imagined, breaking barriers that people said were impossible. Your dreams were big, bold, and fearless. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't wait for approval. They existed because they were meant to. But somewhere along the way, life happened, love happened, disappointment happened, fear crept in, doubt whispered in your ear, and little by little, those dreams that once burned so brightly started to fade. For some, the shift happened slowly, One sacrifice here, one compromise there, one small adjustment to make space for someone else's vision. You told yourself it was temporary, that you would get back to it, that it wasn't a big deal. But time passed, and instead of running toward your purpose, you found yourself standing still, watching others move forward while you remained stuck. You told yourself you were just being patient, that the right time would come, but deep down, you knew the truth. You had put your dreams on hold for the sake of someone else's comfort. For others, the moment was sharp, clear, and undeniable. You were given a choice: your dreams or your relationship, your calling or their comfort, your vision or their validation. And you chose them. You chose the relationship that required you to shrink. You chose the love that made you doubt yourself. You chose the partnership that didn't make room for your purpose. And now you find yourself in a place where you barely recognize the person you once were. The woman who dreamed fearlessly is now quiet. The woman who believed in herself without hesitation is now full of questions. The woman who once walked boldly is now walking carefully, afraid of stepping too far, afraid of taking up too much space. But what you must understand is that your dreams were never meant to be sacrificed. They were never meant to be put aside, hidden away, or given up in the name of love, approval, or acceptance. Your dreams are part of who you are. They were placed inside of you for a reason. They were designed to push you forward, to give you purpose, to make an impact. And any love that asks you to let go of your dreams is not love. It is control. Any person who truly cares for you will not only make space for your dreams, but will encourage them, support them, and help you bring them to life. You were not created to live a life of regret. You were not placed on this earth to watch others fulfill their calling while you sit in the background wondering what could have been. The dreams inside of you are still there. They may be buried under years of neglect. They may be hidden beneath layers of fear and doubt, but they are not gone. They are waiting for you to believe again, waiting for you to choose yourself, waiting for you to remember that you are capable, that you are worthy, that you are still called to something greater. Somewhere along the way, you convince yourself that it was too late, that you missed your chance, that the opportunity had passed. But time does not determine purpose. Delay does not mean denial. What is meant for you will always be meant for you, but you have to be willing to step back into it. You have to be willing to take the risk, to silence the doubts, to walk forward even when fear is screaming at you to stop. Your dreams are waiting for you to fight for them again. There was a time when you walked confidently in who you were. You didn't question your worth, didn't second guess your choices, didn't feel the need to prove yourself to anyone. You knew what you liked, what you wanted, and what you believed in. You had your own way of speaking, your own way of dressing, your own way of expressing yourself. You were whole. But somewhere along the way, you started changing, not because you wanted to, but because you felt like you had to. At first, it was subtle. You started adjusting your tone, making your words softer, so they wouldn't seem too strong. You started dressing differently, choosing outfits that would make you more appealing, more acceptable. You started agreeing with things you never really agreed with, pretending to be okay with things that never sat right in your spirit, and you told yourself it wasn't a big deal. You told yourself that you were just compromising, that you were just making small adjustments, that you were just trying to keep the peace. But what you didn't realize was that with every small change, you were slowly losing pieces of yourself. One day you looked in the mirror and the reflection staring back at you didn't feel familiar. The confidence you once had was replaced with hesitation. The fire you once carried had dimmed into something barely noticeable. The opinions you once voiced with certainty were now filtered through the lens of what someone else might think. You had become a version of yourself that was designed to fit someone else's expectations. And the saddest part, you didn't even realize what had happened. It's easy to lose yourself when you care. It's easy to start bending when you love deeply, when you want things to work, when you believe that sacrificing parts of yourself is the price you have to pay for love. It's easy to convince yourself that changing a little here and a little there is just part of the process, that it's what it takes to keep someone happy. But what you don't see in the moment is the slow erosion of your identity. You don't see how each compromise takes you further away from the person you were meant to be. You don't see how little by little you become a stranger to yourself. And then one day you wake up feeling empty. You wake up feeling lost. You wake up wondering why you don't laugh the same way anymore, why the things that once made you excited now feel distant, why the dreams you once chased with passion now seem impossible. You wonder why you no longer feel like yourself, and it's because you've been carrying a version of yourself that was never meant to exist. You've been wearing a mask, playing a role, trying to be what someone else wanted instead of what you were created to be. Losing yourself is not something that happens overnight. It happens in moments, in choices, in the quiet surrender of your true self for the sake of someone else's comfort. But the good news is that just as you lost yourself little by little, you can reclaim yourself little by little. You can begin to remember what makes you feel alive. You can start speaking your truth again, even if your voice shakes. You can make choices that honor who you truly are without fear of who will or won't accept them. The world doesn't need a watered-down version of you. It doesn't need a version of you that has been molded and reshaped to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. The world needs the real you, the you that is bold, the you that is fearless, the you that doesn't apologize for taking up space, because that version of you is the one who is meant to walk in purpose, the one who is meant to shine, the one who is meant to be free. You have always been the strong one, the one who carries the weight of the world on her shoulders, the one who shows up when everyone else walks away, the one who fixes what others break. You have been the safe place, the healer, the rescuer. You have poured your heart, your time, your energy into people who were never meant to be your responsibility, and you did it because you care. Because you love deeply, because you see the potential in others, even when they can't see it in themselves. But somewhere along the way, you forgot something important. You were never meant to carry burdens that don't belong to you. It is not your job to heal someone who refuses to heal themselves. It is not your job to fix someone who refuses to acknowledge that they are broken. It is not your job to save someone who is drowning in their own choices, but refuses to reach for the lifeline. You cannot love someone into changing. You cannot sacrifice yourself into making them whole. No matter how much you give, no matter how much you try, no matter how deeply you care, you cannot carry what was never yours to carry. Some of you have exhausted yourselves trying to be the solution to someone else's problems. You have drained yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, trying to hold together what was never meant to be your burden. You have lost sleep worrying about things that aren't yours to fix. You have sacrificed your own peace to bring peace to someone else. And now you find yourself tired, frustrated, and empty because you were never designed to live this way. There is a difference between supporting someone and carrying them. There is a difference between loving someone and losing yourself in them. There is a difference between being a help and being a savior. You can pray for them, you can encourage them, you can be there for them, but you cannot make them change. You cannot force them to grow. You cannot carry their pain as if it is your own. And if you keep trying, you will break under the weight of something you were never meant to hold. Some people don't want to be healed, they just want to be rescued. They don't want to put in the work, they just want someone to keep picking up the pieces every time they fall apart. And the more you carry them, the more they expect you to. The more you solve their problems, the more they stop trying to solve them for themselves. You think you're helping, but what you're really doing is enabling. You think you're showing love, but what you're really doing is teaching them that they don't have to take responsibility for their own life. Love is not supposed to feel like a heavy burden. Relationships are not supposed to feel like an endless cycle of fixing and repairing and rebuilding. Love should not leave you exhausted. Love should not make you feel like you are carrying more than your heart can bear. Real love doesn't ask you to sacrifice your own well-being just to keep someone else from falling apart. Real love doesn't drain you, it fills you. At some point, you have to release what isn't yours to carry. You have to stop feeling guilty for letting people handle the consequences of their own actions. You have to stop thinking that if you don't fix it, everything will fall apart. You have to stop believing that if you don't carry it, no one else will. Some weights are meant to be laid down. Some battles are not yours to fight. Some burdens are not yours to bear. And the moment you realize that, you will finally know what it means to be free. Respect is not something you should have to beg for, negotiate, or continuously remind someone to give you. It is the foundation of how you deserve to be treated. It is the standard, not a privilege, and yet, too many times you have found yourself tolerating what should have been unacceptable. You have made excuses, given second chances, and silenced your intuition in the name of love, patience, and understanding. But no matter how much you give, how much you explain, or how much you try to prove your worth, someone who does not respect you will never truly value you. Disrespect does not always come in loud, obvious ways. Sometimes it is quiet. It hides in dismissive tones, in being unheard, in being overlooked. It shows up in conversations where your voice is ignored, in relationships where your feelings are minimized, in moments where you are made to feel like your emotions are too much or your standards are too high. It disguises itself as jokes at your expense, as broken promises, as subtle digs that chip away at your confidence over time. And the more you tolerate it, the more it grows. You may have convinced yourself that it's not a big deal, that no relationship is perfect, that everyone has flaws. You may have told yourself that you are strong enough to handle it, that you don't want to overreact, that as long as there is love, you can overlook the small things. But disrespect is never small. It may start with something minor, but if you allow it, it will become a pattern. And before you know it, you are living in a reality where being dismissed, belittled, or disregarded feels normal. You were not created to shrink yourself so that someone else can feel powerful. You were not meant to walk on eggshells, to censor your words, to make yourself smaller just to keep the peace. The moment you tolerate disrespect, you give someone permission to continue treating you that way. The moment you ignore the signs, you teach them that their behavior has no consequences. The moment you accept less than what you deserve, you tell them that it is okay to keep giving you less. It is not your job to teach someone how to respect you. A person who truly values you will not need repeated reminders on how to treat you. They will not need to be convinced to consider your feelings, to honor their words, to be mindful of their actions. Respect is not something that should be forced, begged for, or earned. It should be freely given. And if it is not, then you are not in a space that is worthy of you. There will always be people who test your boundaries, who push the limits to see how much you will tolerate. There will always be people who take advantage of your kindness, who mistake your patience for weakness, who assume that just because you forgive, you will continue to endure. But you do not have to prove your strength by enduring mistreatment. Walking away from what does not honor you is also strength. Refusing to settle for less than you deserve is also strength. Choosing yourself is strength. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. If you accept broken promises, the cycle will continue. If you tolerate half-hearted love, that is all you will ever receive. If you stay silent when you should speak up, you will keep finding yourself in spaces where your voice does not matter. Respect is not about control. It is about value. And if someone does not see your value, it is not your job to convince them. It is your job to walk away from anything that makes you forget who you are. Love is not meant to be a test of how much pain you can endure. It is not supposed to be a battle where you constantly have to prove yourself, where you are left questioning your worth, where you are made to feel like you have to fight just to be seen, heard, or valued. Love should not leave you feeling exhausted, depleted, or unseen. It should not require you to abandon yourself in the process of keeping it alive. Yet too many times you have found yourself sacrificing your happiness, your peace, and your well-being for the sake of someone else's comfort. You have stayed in situations that drained you because you believed that love was supposed to be hard. You have convinced yourself that if you just hold on a little longer, if you just give a little more, if you just love them enough, then things will change. But love is not about proving your strength through suffering. It is not about constantly bending, adjusting, and compromising until there is nothing left of you. Love is meant to pour into you, not take everything from you. Sacrificing your happiness should never be a requirement for love. You should not have to suppress your emotions, silence your needs, or pretend to be okay just to keep someone else happy. You should not have to choose between your joy and their comfort, between your dreams and their approval, between your peace and their acceptance. Love is not supposed to feel like a burden. It is not meant to make you feel like you are always giving while receiving nothing in return. When you sacrifice your happiness for someone else, you start losing pieces of yourself. The things that once brought you joy start to feel distant. The dreams you once chased with excitement begin to feel impossible. The laughter that once came easily starts to feel rare. You wake up one day and realize that in trying to make someone else happy, you have forgotten how to make yourself happy. And no matter how much you try to convince yourself that this is just how love works, deep down you know that love should never cost you your joy. There is a difference between compromise and self-abandonment. Compromise is meeting in the middle, finding a balance, creating a space where both people feel valued and fulfilled. But self-abandonment is losing yourself entirely, giving up your needs, your desires, and your happiness just to keep someone else satisfied. And if love requires you to abandon yourself, then it is not love. It is a slow form of self-destruction. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that loving someone meant putting them first, even at the expense of yourself. You were told that sacrifice was a part of love, that endurance was proof of devotion. But real love does not require you to disappear in order to make someone else feel whole. Real love does not ask you to suffer in silence, to endure loneliness in a relationship, to sacrifice your own happiness just to maintain the illusion of a connection. Your happiness matters, your peace matters, your joy matters. And the moment you start prioritizing yourself, you will begin to see the difference between love that nurtures you. You will start to recognize that real love does not make you choose between yourself and the relationship. It allows both to exist in harmony. Love should be a source of joy, not something that constantly takes it away from you. And if you find yourself in a place where you are always sacrificing your happiness just to keep the peace, then maybe it is time to ask yourself why you are willing to give so much to something that gives you so little in return. Trust is one of the most valuable things you can give, and once it is broken, it is never the same. It is fragile, delicate, and difficult to repair. And yet, time and time again, you have found yourself giving second chances to people who never truly deserved the first. You have allowed words to overshadow actions, let apologies silence your intuition, and ignored red flags because you wanted so badly to believe that things could be different. But trust is not something that should be handed out freely to those who have proven they cannot be trusted. There is a difference between forgiveness and forgetting. You can forgive someone for their mistakes, but that does not mean you should welcome them back into your life as if nothing happened. You can choose to let go of the pain they caused, but that does not mean you should ignore the pattern of their behavior. Too often you have mistaken your kindness for an obligation to give someone another chance. You have allowed guilt to convince you that setting boundaries is cruel, that distancing yourself is unfair, that walking away makes you heartless. But protecting yourself is not cruel, it is necessary. When someone betrays your trust, they are showing you who they are. They are revealing their ability to disregard your feelings, to put themselves before you, to act in ways that prove they do not value the relationship the way that you do. And yet, you have told yourself that if you love them enough, if you are patient enough, if you try hard enough, they will change. But trust is not rebuilt through effort alone. It is rebuilt through consistent, intentional actions that prove their words are more than just empty promises. You cannot force someone to be trustworthy. You cannot convince someone to value your heart the way that you value theirs. And the moment you start trying to prove that you are worthy of honesty, of respect, of loyalty, is the moment you have already lost yourself. Trust should not require constant testing. It should not require you to doubt, to overthink, to question every move. When you trust someone, it should feel safe, not like a gamble. Every time you allow someone to break your trust and return without consequence, you teach them that their actions have no weight. You show them that they can hurt you and still have a place in your life. And once someone realizes they can betray you and still be welcomed back, they will do it again. Not because they don't care about you, but because they know you will always be there. Because they know you will always believe the apology, always accept the excuse, always hope for the best, even when they have given you every reason not to. The truth is, trust. It's not just about them, it is about you. It is about your willingness to protect yourself, to value your own heart enough to walk away from what does not honor you. It is about recognizing that your love does not have to be proven through endless chances, that your kindness does not mean allowing yourself to be mistreated, that your strength is not measured by how much you can endure, but by how much you refuse to tolerate. People will show you who they are. They will reveal their character in the way they treat you, in the way they handle your trust, in the way they respect or disregard your boundaries. And when they do, it is not your job to rewrite the story, to paint them as someone they are not, to hold on to potential instead of reality. Trust is a gift, and once it is broken, it is up to you to decide whether someone is truly deserving of another chance. Not based on words, not based on promises, but based on actions that prove that this time they are different. Love should never cost you your self-respect. It should never make you feel like you have to compromise your standards, lower your expectations, or accept less than what you know you deserve. But too often you have found yourself excusing behavior that should have never been tolerated. You have overlooked the signs, justified the red flags, and convinced yourself that patience, loyalty, and understanding would somehow turn the situation around. You have given chances when they were not earned, stayed when you knew you should have left, and settled for treatment that made you question your worth. But real love should never require you to forget who you are. There is a difference between grace and self-betrayal. Grace allows room for mistakes, understanding, and growth. But self-betrayal happens when you ignore what you know to be true, when you silence your instincts, when you choose someone else's comfort over your own dignity. Every time you accept less than what you deserve, you chip away at your self-respect. But every time you ignore the way you feel deep down, you teach yourself that your emotions do not matter. Every time you let someone get away with disrespect, you tell them that it is okay to treat you that way. You have told yourself that love means compromise, that relationships require sacrifice, that if you just hold on long enough, things will change. But there is a fine line between compromise and losing yourself completely. You should not have to beg to be treated with kindness. You should not have to remind someone to respect you. You should not have to accept inconsistency, dishonesty, or emotional neglect just because you love them. Love should never feel like a battle to prove that you are worthy of being treated well. The way you allow yourself to be treated sets the standard for every relationship you will ever have. If you do not demand respect, you will not receive it. If you do not enforce boundaries, they will be crossed. If you do not value yourself enough to walk away, you will continue to find yourself in spaces where you are not truly valued. The people in your life will only treat you at the level you allow. And if you keep accepting less, you will keep receiving less. It is not your job to convince someone to see your worth. It is not your responsibility to prove why you deserve to be treated well. The right person will never make you question whether or not you are enough. The right person will not put you in a position where you feel like you have to fight for basic respect. Love is not supposed to feel like a constant battle to be heard, to be valued, to be chosen. Love should be given freely, not something you have to earn by enduring mistreatment. You cannot continue pouring into someone who only takes from you. You cannot keep giving and giving while receiving nothing in return. Love is not supposed to drain you. It is supposed to fill you. And if you find yourself in a situation where you feel empty, where you feel like you are constantly compromising your self-worth, then it is time to take a step back and ask yourself why you are accepting so little when you deserve so much more. You owe it to yourself to honor your worth, to stop explaining why you deserve respect, to stop making excuses for people who refuse to do better, to stop settling for the bare minimum and calling it love. The moment you decide that you are worthy of more is the moment everything changes. Because when you refuse to settle, when you stand firm in your standards, when you walk away from what does not serve you, you make room for the kind of love that never asks you to diminish yourself in order to receive it.